Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows and adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about dealing with Mikadono Sisters is a Breeze, Season 1, Episode 3. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, I want to talk about the fact is I had a question at the end of that last episode. I was like, oh, is this show going to have multiple endings? Maybe not to the degree of Chainsaw Man, but it seems like that's the case. Not only is it a different song, so I guess like you could be like every sister gets a different theme, but also they animate it differently. The one with Kazuki last episode was CGI, like 3D animated. This one with Nico is 2D animated, like just like the show. So I thought that's so interesting. And it obviously leans into kind of some of the aesthetics and elements of the sisters. Whereas like Kazuki kind of has like that Prince like element to her. And then Nico, you know, this episode plays into like kind of her insecurities about not thinking she can look girly because so many people look at her as like the tomboy, and she kind of embraces it because she thinks that's how people view her, so she leaned into it. So she doesn't think girly stuff is like in her repertoire or not. So this episode, the ending of the episode kind of leans into that too. So it's really interesting. So I'm assuming there's going to at least be one or two more, because I'm assuming Yu gets his own one. Because I'd have to go back to the first episode. I don't remember what the ending for that one was. There might have just been credits. I don't remember. But then we're definitely going to get a Miwa one. But I think we'll probably get a Yu one if we didn't get one at the end of episode 1. Like I said, I just don't remember now. But anyway, getting into the episode itself, we're picking up with everyone having dinner together, and it's actually really sweet and beautiful, especially Kazuki being like, yeah, I ate the soup, you know, as long as it's not like, you know, good, as long as there's no carrots in it. And then Yu leans in and is like, I did put carrots in, I grated them in there. And she's like, what? So, but he's like, we finally had this moment, we're all like eating together and it's nice. And he kind of got the victory he wanted to some extent. But then later on, he finds out, like, wait, they're all going to be super busy, so there's no time for dinner. So he's kind of upset by that, because he's just like, yeah, he feels like every time they took one step forward, they ultimately ended up taking one step back. And so he's wondering about, like, well, what actually is, like, what does it mean to actually be a family, to have a big family? Because he's thinking about what his mom wanted for it, you know. And so he starts watching his mom's TV show, and there was a point where, like, it's like, oh, the husband and wife never had a proper wedding or whatever, so they kind of have like a makeshift, like, oh, this is kind of our proper wedding. And it's interesting because Yu's like, oh, seeing his mom in a wedding dress leaves him with complicated feelings, which I'm like, I wonder what that stems from. Is that because like whatever the situation is with his dad, whether his mom got divorced or whether like his mom and dad got divorced or whether his dad died? I'm curious if that's supposed to insinuate like maybe she never got remarried, and maybe that's why he has such a complicated feeling about it, knowing like, oh, it's a happy thing, but it's like my mom never really got to have that happiness, especially because me and her had drifted apart. I mean, as he leans into it later on too about how like they like at first he was like, yeah, I'm used to missing dinner because like not having dinner, you know, because he's like, yeah, mom would miss dinner for like a month straight because she had to be away because of her role. But he was like, but that's around like that also like played a role in our relationship distancing, so that's why he wants to find a way around that. So he's hoping to do so by watching the show, and he's looking at the family stuff, and he's trying to take notes from it, you know. And ultimately, the siblings come home and watch him like crying from it. And Kazuki's the only one that pieced it together, because they're like, oh, you're watching this TV show drama? You watched all of this? And Kazuki's like, oh my God, Subura is on the TV. So it's like, oh, he must really miss his mom, which is like, yes and no. But they're thinking she's thinking he's watching this because he's like missing his mom. Once again, it's still vague enough that I'm like, I'm getting the feeling his mom's alive. She's just away. Like, until the show definitive, like I said, I might be out of pocket, I might be crazy, but like it feels like ever since last episode, I'm like, I get that feeling his mom's not dead. His mom's actually still alive. She's just away, and because she's been away, he hasn't had the opportunity to repair their relationship, or he's so awkward about it, he doesn't know how to. But because the setup feels like they're leaning into it too much, but I'm also like, yeah, if he's part of the dead parent club, or maybe dead parents club, depending on what the dad situation is, you'd assume his dad's not around to some extent. Then if like he might have died when you was young or something, if that was the case, for his dad to not be in the picture too, or you know, so because he'd be staying with his dad rather than staying with like the Mikadonos, you know. So I don't know. But I'm still keeping that part of my brain open where I'm like, I'm feeling more and more likely, and it's going to be kind of a rude awakening when it's like, oh, his mom is, But like even like Kazuki's reaction to it kind of but it's like once again it seems like they know what it's like to be a part of the dead parent club, so that's why I'm like maybe it is actually that. I'm just like I said that I'm probably just gonna bring that up all the time. I'm like, is his mom actually dead or is she just away? Either way, he's just talking about the fact is that he kind of wants them to kind of be like more like a family and stuff, which they're like, what are you talking about? Like they're like, I get it, you know, it must be hard for you kind of being away and stuff and kind of having to stay here with us, but like basically you don't have to try so hard, you don't have to cook dinner like just to win us over and try to fit in. It's like, yeah, you're good. And even like Nico's like, you know, you don't have to try so hard, you know, you're freeloading here and that's fine. He's like, freeloader me? She's like, yeah, who else would I be talking about? He's like, no, but the fact is, he's like, I messed things up between me and my mom and I let things kind of create a distance between us. But he's like, yo, I want to be a family with you guys. And they're like, what are you even talking about? Like, how would you even go about that? And then it perfectly cuts to a scene in the show where his mom's getting married and they internalize that as like, wait, is that him kind of saying like, wait, to be a family we need to get married? So they're all individually thinking about them in bridal dresses and they're like, why are we thinking this? Why it's like this subliminal messaging is getting on our heads. And for him it's like, I need Miwa, we're both in the same grade, so I need to know, let's exchange birthday information, because that way I get to know whether to consider you a younger sister or an older sister. He's like, let's start. My birthday's in December, and all three of them get pissed at him because they're like, oh, you idiot. We got swept up thinking about something, but here you are thinking about something stupid like that. And so Nico's in the bath kind of stressing about it because she's like, he's literally living in a house with three girls, and he's not having any reaction at all. Once again, it plays into like her insecurity, thinking like, oh, no guy would like find me pretty or whatever because I give off such tomboyish energy. So like no one, like, so that's where you kind of see some of that insecurity creeping out in that earlier part of the episode. But like he screams because he forgot to buy bread because he wants to make them sandwiches like for like the next day or whatever. She's like, and she comes out in a towel like, wait, you were screaming about that? I forgot what it was. He said or did something that made her blush. Oh, he was like, yo, you can't come out in a towel like that again. You're going to catch a cold. And it's her being like nervous about it. It's storming away. And me was like, yo, why are you acting like this? Like, you kind of had no issue with him kind of seeing you naked before, but now all of a sudden you're blushing. And then me was trying to take the towels from him. Like, oh, thank you for folding those. She touches his hand and freaks out, like her growing bright red and just kind of freaking out. And I love Nico messing up and saying like, oh, you're also crushing on? And then I didn't notice that phrasing until Miwa went, you're also? I was like, wow, slip of the tongue, huh? And so they're battling it out. You ask Kazuki, who comes through, like, yo, can you put something up for me? You're so tall. It's like, oh, you're so awesome. And he smiles at her, and then she kind of blushes. And then Miwa and Nico are busting her chops and they're fighting. And he's like, oh, siblings shouldn't fight. But it's like, that is what siblings do. You know, obviously Yu's an only child, so he doesn't have that experience. But it's like, it's not, I mean, yes, you don't want your siblings to fight. I mean, it also makes sense from Yu's perspective because they're not close to each other necessarily. Like, yeah, we cooperate, like we cohabitate the same area of living, but we don't really interact because at school we basically go our separate ways. At home we immediately go to our rooms. We don't really like interact. You know, we had dinner together for the first time in like forever. So, and then all three of you, because obviously like Nico, I mean, not even dinner, it was like breakfast, I believe, or lunch or whatever. It was Nico and Miwa who ended up like having lunch together before, but this is the first time like all three of them like were sitting together, and you know, you was included with that trio as well. So, and this is when you ends up discovering that photo. It's them when they were children. And he's like, oh my God, they're so adorable, little angels. How the hell did they grow up into the grumps that they are? But he's like, yo, this photo must belong to someone. And he asks each of the sisters, but they're like, no, it's not mine. Like, why would I care about something like that? Or like Kazuki's like, it's a family photo. Like, it doesn't really belong to anyone. But I thought it was interesting because Yu's like, no, it must belong to somebody for it to end up there. It's like either, so someone must miss this memory and they're a little insecure about it and don't want to admit that they do. Like, they must be looking back on this and missing this time. And that kind of gets you thinking like, oh, like someone wants to reach out amongst the siblings to like be back to when they were so close, but either to embarrass or it's that thing of so much time has passed, you kind of feel like, well, we're past the point of doing that. And obviously this strikes a chord with you because so much time wasted between him and his mom when they could have been closer, but that distance grew and grew, and it's not till like it was potentially too late that gap got smaller. So it's like all those wasted years we could have been a lot closer. And he even made that point to them where it's like, yo, like I always acted like me and my mom were so different, but I didn't really try to make us like I didn't play my part in closing that gap. In fact, I'm the part of the reason why that gap grew more and more. We still actually don't know whose photo is. I'm actually curious and I'm actually wondering, what do we find out it actually isn't any of their photos? Because, I mean, you, for the most part, is home most of the day, especially on, like, the weekends, taking care of stuff. But, like, when he's away from at school, I mean, we might find out it is one of the sisters. It might end up being, like, because the episode kind of hints to it might be Miwa, but it might actually end up being Nico, but we'll get to that in a bit later. But I'm also what immediately crossed my mind, not even thinking Miwa until later in the episode. I was actually thinking, like, you don't think their dad came home early and he happened to be looking at the photo and he just forgot to put it up before he left? That's immediately where my mind went, but I could be mistaken. Like I said, the obvious one seems to be Miwa, but I feel like if it's probably going to end up being anyone, it might actually end up being Nico, but we'll have to wait to see. But yeah, the siblings can't get together like he wants them to because they've got like two of them got tournaments coming up. Specifically, Nico's got to train for the tournament. There's some preliminaries for Miwa, and then Nico's got like a performance coming up and stuff. And that's why I was bringing up last episode. I was curious if that's just like this part of the arc of the show, or is that going to be like leading, like, is that going to be the entire arc of the season? Because like she's in the preliminaries and the tournament's coming up and the performances are like, that's why I'm like, I don't know if it's going to cover the entire season storyline wise leading up and helping with those particular things, or they're just kind of like the benchmark of the arc. I mean, it might be like, this might be an overarching arc for this part of the manga, but maybe it's the entire arc for this season of the anime. You get what I'm trying to say, hopefully. But Yu is kind of stressing about it because he's like, yeah, I get it. They're going to be away from each other, but it's such a bummer. But then he starts looking at the locations and he pieces it together. He's like, wait, this is where Miwa, wait, and this is where Nico, and this is where Kazuki. And he's like, basically, even then you're kind of like, oh, they're all going to be in the same area. And the funny thing is later on, none of them realize that, but we'll get to that in a bit. And so obviously when it comes to their hotel arrangements, he already has that set up. And he's like, oh, I actually booked you guys some hotels. And they're like, really? He's like, yeah, this is a pretty good hotel. It's like, okay. And he specifically went out of his way to make sure they gave them the addresses separately so they don't realize they're ending up at the same hotel. And Miwa's the first one to be like, yeah, it's going to suck eating like that hotel food for like 2 days. And he's like, oh, Miwa, are you admitting that you're going to miss my food? And she's like, what? No. And then Nico's looking down. And I think it's specifically Kazuki that's like, oh my God, I'm the one that almost said the same thing out loud too. So when they all go off on their own, we catch up with Miwa. She's got a shogi opponent that she, beats. Obviously, she's focused. And the lady there is like, hey, you got a pretty tough opponent. And it's kind of interesting because, like, obviously Miwa's like, okay, it's a tough opponent. Maybe I should, like, practice against the AI. But then she sees the thing about the Cherry Blossom Festival and she thinks back to that day. It's a different angle than the photo, but she's like, oh, that was a good memory. She's like, but why kind of reminisce about that? That's not why get, that's not, I forgot the exact wording, but it's kind of like, that doesn't matter anymore. Once again, it's the belief that they're so far removed from that like so much time has happened, they've spread so far that there's no way their relationship could ever go back to it. It's like, yeah, that's when we were kids. We're grown past that. We've all got our separate lives and our things that we've got to focus on. We don't have time for something like that. But that's the thing. Like, you have to nip that in the bud now, because if it can cause issues later where, like, hey, all three of you split and go separate ways. I mean, it also hits a little close to home because I am the youngest of, well, two older sisters. So, like, yeah, it's like my family is like three. So I'm the baby of the family. So I would be probably in the Miwa situation because, like, I'm pretty sure, yeah, like, Miwa's the youngest. She's the baby of the family. So even though, like, height wise and stuff like that, obviously she's taller Miwa, but she is like the youngest, if I remember correctly. But either way, it just there's a thing of like, right, when you're younger, like, and you drift further apart, if you don't kind of repair some of that drifting will spread, and it will go from, oh, there were lakes between you, now there's oceans between you, like, you know. And so when they all respectively show up at the hotel, being like, wait, why are you here? Wait, why are you here? Wait, what are you doing here? And then you shows up being like, wow, you sisters didn't even bother asking where each one of you was going to be. You would have realized sooner all three of your situations are in the same area, you know? And it's like, wait, why are you here? And he's like, oh, like, I'm here to basically be your festival conductor. Like, I'm here to help out in that front. And initially they're reluctant to go because they're like, because he's looking at this as an opportunity. He's like, whoever wants to secretly go. And I love when he has those moments where he kind of like, oh, I'm being devious, but I'm being devious in a very sweet and wholesome way. But it's like, oh, like whoever it is that wants to go secretly, I'm able to kind of draw, like, I'm pulling at that thread a little bit. But they're like, right, we're so busy with what we got. But he's like, hey, don't worry about it. You should all go because there's this like luck thing you can pull and pray for luck. But they're like, no. I think it was Nico specifically, like, luck is for losers like you. The fact is, like, all I need is true belief in my ability. But he points out, like, yo, some big time actors, athletes, and like martial artists or shogi players have also come here for that same purpose. And it's actually Kazuki first. It's like, all right, fine, I'll do it, you know, because he's like, basically, like, it will help you in the long run, because it's like having, like, being power, like, you know, skill is important, but it's also nice to, like, you know, also have faith too, you know, and have something to kind of believe in that regard, because it'll help loosen you up, because if you're too stiff, and it'll mess you up in the long run. So Kazuki's like, all right, let's go. So they have to go and get kimonos. Obviously, the lady who's running the shop is like so happy. She's like, oh my God, it's the Mikadono sisters. This is crazy. They're so pretty and everything. And so one by one, they all get kimonos that fit their personalities. One that fits Kazuki with like her elegance and like her tallness. And then like Miwa and the cats and cuteness, because it's like she's very cat-like. But then we get to Nico, who's reluctant because she's like, I don't, like, there's probably none here that are going to fit me, because she's thinking back to when she was a kid and she saw a pretty dress she wanted to wear, and we see what probably appears to be her dad, because I think that's also why he's doing what he's doing, because he recognizes, like, and I made the parallel in episode 1 about Girls of the Wilds, of how the principal of that school wanted the girls to be a lot more well-rounded rather than just being focused on being like martial artists. It's kind of the same thing of like, yeah, I kind of set my daughters down a path and they've kind of drifted apart, and I want to repair that, because I'm doing that by giving you what he wants, but I'm also giving myself what I want, and I'm also repairing the relationship with my daughter's relationships with each other, and also kind of fixing what I kind of like let play out for too long. Maybe he thought, I mean, we don't know. Maybe it was someone else, because we don't get to see who it is, but we do hear this voice be like, oh, you should wear these jeans because it'll help you move better. Because it's the thing of, I help push you down your respective paths because you're prodigies. Now the question then becomes like, I didn't realize how unwell-rounded I was making you guys. I sent you down your paths, and that's kind of isolated you all three on your individual islands, and you feel so alone. Because the person running the shop, it's like, oh, here's one for you. It's nice denim. It's going to make you look handsome. But then it's like, oh no, I think this would look really pretty. And then even Kazuki and Miwa are like, oh, that's not going to match her at all. But he's like, no, I think it'll match like someone like pretty and cute like she is. And ultimately the decision's hers, and she chooses to wear the pretty one. And she's like, yeah, it doesn't fit me. But it's like, oh my God, even the lady, like everyone is awestruck in how she looks. And she looks very, very cute, you know, in it, just like you said she would, you know. And I think that's going to go a long way to making her find some balance going forward. Just like I said, playing into the outro of the episode with like her kind of, you know, balancing that out, because she's walking by seeing girls with like pink ribbons in their hair, and it's like, oh, like, can I pull off the girliness? And we get to see like her do that, you know. So that, like, those are both facets of herself that she's, one side she's kind of had to bury because she's kind of grown up believing like, oh, I don't have that girly side to me. But it's like, you do, and it's okay. It's okay to be the tomboy that you are, but you can also, it's okay to also be like, every once in a while, I want to be a little girly. I like pretty things too. I like cute things too. So just a nice, cute episode all around. It just ends up being such a sweet and adorable show. Continues to be one, and I'm so excited to see where the next episode ultimately ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.